The Land Raider is one of the oldest and most respected vehicles in the Space Marine motor pool, and in 40k as a whole. Of course, it is iconic to the setting, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't think I've ever met someone who didn't like the Land Raider. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we are covering the Land Raider. Just the standard variant today, though we will cover the other two variants and the flying variant in due time. So, the Land Raider is of course quite a ginormous, chunky vehicle. It comes in at 240 points, it has 10 inches of movement, toughness 12, 2+ save, 16 wounds, leadership 6+, and OC 5, so it actually has some weight on objectives. It has a lot of wounds, and toughness 12 means it's resilient to pretty much all kinds of weaponry except the most dedicated anti-tank like laser destroyers. Its 2+ save does help in that regard and loves cover, especially when being targeted by those super weapons. Movement 10 is fairly standard for a tank of this side, though is nice as it can transport some very slow things. In terms of ranged weapons, on the top you can mount a multi-melta or stormbolter. The multi-melta is Melta 2, 18-inch range, 2 attacks that hits on 3, strength 9, AP 4, and damage D6. A fairly nice little extra anti-armor punch, though that's not necessarily where this tank struggles. And then, or you can mount a Stormbolter, which rapid fire 2, 24-inch range, 2 attacks, hit on 3, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. Again, I've said this a million times, fairly standard anti-light infantry firepower. The Stormbolter is twin-linked and sustain hits 1. It hits on 3 attacks, 36-inch range, strength 5, AP 1, damage 2. Some light, anti-infantry firepower. It's good for killing Space Marines, but not too much else. Then on the sponsons, we of course have the Godhammer las cannons, which have 2 attacks apiece, ballistic skill 3+, 48-inch range, strength 12, AP 3, damage D6+1, and it of course has 2 of those, which means it has 4 shots total, which are all very powerful, and we'll love things like at the moment. Then you can also mount a Hunter-Killer Missile, which is 1 shot, 1 attack that hits on 2s, but it will always miss, 48-inch range, strength 14, AP 3, damage D6+1. This is, of course, a nice extra juiced punch of anti-armor when you make first contact with the enemy, or if they have something very obvious that you need to blast away with the las cannons, and the Hunter-Killer Missile, which will leave most vehicles in a much worse state than they started off in. In terms of melee weapons, it's fairly unimpressive, 6 attacks, they hit on 4, strength 8, AP 0, damage 1. Don't charge this thing. In terms of abilities, it has Deadly Demise D6. Of course, so that is quite a bit of explosion, so be careful if you're facing something that can easily destroy this, which there's not too many things that can do this, but just be mindful of what you're putting around it. Anything super fragile certainly won't like it. Though it is also useful if you charge into the enemies with it, not actually you get them close in, this thing explodes, it can shower mortal wounds over the entire enemy army. Then Assault Ramp, each time this unit disembarks from this model after it is moved, that unit is still eligible to charge, which is super useful, as this thing has 12 transport slots for infantry, jump packs, terms take 2 spots, and Centurions take 3. For 240 points, this is a very, very well-rounded kit, and is overall a very solid tank in general. You're not going to lose this thing too easily unless you're facing some seriously dedicated anti-armor, something like a Gladiator Lancer, or anything larger. So, in terms of the best use, the Land Raider is of course a well-rounded unit. Its damage is good, but its toughness is better, and of course you definitely need to be making use of its transport capacities, preferably with something that's meant for combat. Well, you can technically transport just about anything, whether it be Centurions, Mark 10 armor, Tactics armor, or jetpacks or Terminators. It feels strange to run a Land Raider and not fill it up with Terminators. I'm not saying you can't do it, I'm just saying it's a little strange in my opinion. And the best Terminators for it, in my personal opinion, are the Deathwing Knights. As they only come in 5s, it's not like you can run a bigger unit, and you can attach a character, and then have them all saddle up in this and move off. This is of course very solid, as Deathwing Knights, while they are fine foot-slogging, extra speed never hurts. And they will of course appreciate getting to far-flung enemies quicker to vanquish them. Of course, as I mentioned, its damage is good, but you will need to make use of both its damage, its transport capacity, and its toughness for this thing to be really worth bringing, so make sure you have something worth transporting. Don't just fill it with Assault Intercessors or something like that. You'd want to fill it with something like Blade Guard or Inner Circle Companions if you don't want to use Terminators, though I'd say the other transports are better for that overall. Overall, I'd say the Land Raider is, again, rock solid. It's not going to go down too easy, it's going to pack quite a punch for whatever it points at, and it can transport some seriously deadly units. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. The Land Raider Crusader is a variant of the Land Raider tank brought about in only M39, making it one of the youngest tanks used by the Space Marines, supplanted only by the Primaris tanks, of course. It was invented by the Black Templars, specifically as a close shock vehicle, enhancing the sort of usage as an assault vehicle that the Land Raider is known for. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we're covering the Land Raider Crusader. And the Land Raider Crusader is pretty similar to the Land Raider, unsurprisingly. Comes in at 220 points, movement 10, toughness 12, a 2+ save, 16 wounds, leadership 6+, and OC 5. This is, of course, the same as a Land Raider, but for about 9% cheaper, and is also very solid. As a stat line, it's fast enough. It's pretty dang tough, all things considered. Really enjoying the toughness 12, making it much more resilient to las cannons than a lot of other vehicles are, and of course the 2+ save is always good, especially with Armor of Contempt. In terms of ranged weapons, it's almost exactly the same as the Land Raider, spare its front-mounted turret and its sponsons. It of course can take a multi-melta, which is melted 2, 18-inch range, 2 attacks, hit on 3s at strength 9, AP 4, and damage D6. Of course, a nice bit of anti-armor punch, sting in the tail, given the other weapons on this are more focused on anti-infantry. It can, of course, take a Hunter-Killer Missile, the most inaccurate thing in the game. Just one shot that hits on 2s at strength 14, AP 3, damage D6+1, which, while it always feels unreliable, is a nice extra piece of anti-armor for this thing's first tango with a vehicle, which does help because its sponsons are Hurricane Bolters. The Hurricane Bolters are, of course, twin and rapid-fire 6 at 24-inch range, 6 attacks, hit on 3s at strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. This is a really, really good profile for clearing out things like Imperial Guard or Eldar or Sisters. This is of course really solid. The twin helps a lot and even helps it punch up a little bit. On the front we have a twin assault cannon, one of my favorite weapons in the entirety of 40k, which is devastating wounds, twin linked, 6 attacks, hit on 3s, 36-inch range at strength 6, AP 0, and damage 1. Of course this is very solid and is useful for chipping wounds off of anything and just adds into more of that anti-infantry firepower up close. In terms of melee weapons, I'm not really sure what you want me to say. I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. 6 attacks, hits on 4, strength 8, AP 0, damage 1. Very bad in melee. Don't charge this thing. Let the things in its cargo bay charge. And speaking of, it has the same ability as the normal Land Raider, which is Assault Ramp. Each time a unit disembarks from this vehicle after it is moved, that unit is still able to charge, which is very useful, and means this thing is far better with assault troops than it is with ranged troops, so things like Terminators, or even Inner Circle Companions, which does help, as the transport capacity of this is upgraded all the way to 16 infantry. Jump pack and term models, of course, take 2, and Centurions take up 3 slots, so you can't fit any more Centurions in, really. Though you can fit a lot more other things in here. You can fit up to 8 Terminators, of course, and you can fit 16 normal infantry, which isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, but it does open up some possibilities, which I think actually really do make the Land Raider Crusader quite an interesting unit, aside from just how cheap it is for how tough it is. It is the budget premium transport, which is a slot that not a lot of armies have. You know, the orcs have their trucks and the battle wagons, and a lot of them sort of follow that trend. You know, you have your cheap transport and you have your premium transport. This is somewhere in between the two, of course. Its weapons, while mainly slanted toward anti-infantry, do have those twin-linked, and the assault cannon has devastating wounds, which helps it punch just a little bit. It'll stack saves on most targets, at least a couple. But its main use is, of course, against hordes, which can be useful to clear out chaff, whether it be Imperial Guard or Gretchen, to let your big melee troops, whether they be Deathwing Knights or Inner Circle Companions, get into melee quickly. You will want to bring something like Inner Circle Companions or Deathwing Knights because you'll probably want something that can tango with armor pretty well, and both of those units do have the capabilities to do so, especially in Inner Circle or in Gladius Task Force. So they can jump out, clear out the infantry with this thing, and then have these things charge into the more high-valuable targets. As I already mentioned, it's going to stack saves quite a lot, and since it has 16 slots, you can do something the original Land Raider can't. You could, in theory, field 2 6-man squads, whether they be Blade Guard, Inner Circle Companions, or similar. Along with characters, you could have 2 squads of those, so you could have, say, 6 with a chaplain and 6 with a captain, or maybe just a duplicate unit, jumping out of this thing to do a lot of damage when they get up close. My general opinion is that if you have anti-tank covered, whether it be through a Lancer or something similar, or whatever's inside the tank even, this thing is honestly probably the best Land Raider to bring, just because it's so good against light infantry, and you can offload the anti-armor elsewhere. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The Land Raider Redeemer is unsurprisingly a variant of the Land Raider Crusader, making it the youngest version of the Land Raider in use by the Space Marines today. Made by the Flame Lord Space Marine chapter to rout the traitorous world of Grassen, it is of course specialized for close combat. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we are covering the Land Raider Redeemer. The Land Raider Redeemer is of course quite a fun tank. It's a Land Raider with some big flamethrowers, but it certainly pays a high price for it. The Land Raider Redeemer comes in at 285 points, making it by far the most expensive variant of the Land Raider. Then it moves 12 inches, toughness 12, 2 plus save, 16 wounds, leadership 6 plus, and OC 5. A little faster than the standard Land Raider, but not much else, which does mean it's not quite as tanky as the Land Raiders tend to be. In terms of ranged weapons, it has the standard accoutrements of a Multi-Melta Stormbolter and Hunter-Killer Missile. The Multi-Melta is Melta 2, 18-inch range with 2 attacks, a hit on 3s at strength 9, AP 4, and damage D6. This is of course very solid, and is a nice little anti-armor sting in the tail. Then the Stormbolter is Rapid Fire 2, 24-inch range, 2 attacks, a hit on 3, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. Again, a solid enough, if nothing impressive, anti-light infantry gun. Then on the front mount, we have the twin assault cannons, which are twin-linked with devastating wounds, 6 shots, ballistic skill 3 plus, strength 6, AP 0, damage 1, which is of course nice and solid, and helps it punch up thanks to the dev wounds and twin-linked. The Hunter Killer is 1 shot, so you can only use this once, 1 attack, hits on 2s, 48-inch range, strength 14, AP 3, and damage D6 plus 1. Despite being so accurate, it does often feel very inconsistent, though it is a nice little extra piece of anti-armor. Then the main event is the Flamestorm Cannons, which are Torrent, ignores cover, and D6 plus 3 attacks, of course no ballistic skill, strength 6, AP 2, and damage 2. This is a very, very competent infantry killer, and takes buffs really well, unsurprisingly. Of course, this thing does want to be on the front lines, not only to deliver its cargo, but also because most of its weapons are rather close range. Its melee weapon is bad, 6 attacks, strength 8, AP 0, damage 1, hits on 4s. Again, it's a vehicle, you don't need to charge it. The assault ramp, each time this unit makes a move and a unit disembarks from it, that unit is still eligible to make a charge. This is of course very useful to transport mainly assault units, and just has great synergy in general with the things it can transport. It does have slightly increased, though not as much as the Crusader, transport space, which is 14 infantry. Jump packs and terms take 2, and Centurions take 3. This is fairly standard for the modern Land Raider variants, but is still very good. This allows for some interesting combos to be made, and in general is a very nice upgrade over the 12 slots of the standard Land Raider, which allows it to transport a more flexible mix of units, which can really be used to complement its main weaponry. Overall, this thing is obscenely expensive for a Land Raider, but not necessarily to the point where it's awful. It just means you need to make use of not only its great damage, but also its great transport capacity. So if you're going to use this, make sure you have a plan for it. And the plan for it we're going to cover here in a second is relatively simple, much like most of the Land Raiders are. Since it is so pricey, you can't rely on it just for damage, and it does need to transport something. It takes buffs very well, and of course, given its giant fire cannons, it loves Firestorm Spearhead, where it can easily get those torrent buffs, and Vulcan Histon, of course, gives it very powerful buffs as well if he's nearby. But at 300 points, it does need to do a little bit more than that, as its firepower, while not necessarily bad against vehicles, isn't going to be taking down tanks or anything like that without some major buffs. A unit mix that I would like to transport with this could be a 6-man melee unit, whether it be Blade Guard or Inner Circle Companions or anything of that size. And then you can also bring in 3 Eradicators, which would also be very useful to jump out and help this thing deal with any heavy tanks, because Eradicators have, I believe, the best anti-tank in the book, just purely based on numbers, though they do need some sort of method to get to the front line, which this obviously provides at a greatly increased speed, and also keeps them very safe, as this thing is still very tough to a lot of anti-tank firepower. And of course, the 6-man melee unit would of course provide a lot of protection to that very fragile Eradicator unit. As I mentioned earlier, its weapons are mainly curated towards infantry killing. The Flamestorm Cannons are exceptional at that, though they still can punch up against some vehicles, especially with Vulcan Histon. I believe he gives the wound rerolls, as well as being able to get devastating wounds from certain stratagems. Though, of course, I don't use Flamestorm. This guy is right at home at Gladius, allowing him to get to position faster, and extra AP on all those weapons is never bad. And of course, this thing can transport Terminators, but even though it has more space, I'd weirdly say that the Land Raider Normal is better for that, and overall, this thing just needs a specific plan. I've been Spoons Rattling, I hope you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.